Well, think about it. You've heard of the crime of human trafficking, right? Well, we tend to think of white slavers, picking up young women on street corners and hustling them away to places like Morocco. But no, you have all been human trafficked. You have been taken out of your natural status as a man or woman, and you have been created as a person. You've been relabeled a person, and as a person, you have been denigrated to the status of a human, a color of man, not a man, okay? If you were just a man, they wouldn't add hue to it, would they? No, a human. They have unlawfully converted you from your natural status as a man or woman into a human, a color of a man or woman, a person, a mask of yourself, and they have trafficked that human, which is the substance of the phrase human trafficking, okay? They have trafficked that human into the foreign jurisdiction of the sea. And from the foreign jurisdiction of the sea, they have further human trafficked you into the jurisdiction of the air. And you have been subsequently denigrated first to the status of an indentured servant, and next into the status of a slave. And this has been going on in broad daylight in modern times. And the Pope and the British monarch have been benefiting themselves royally and richly off of all of this corruption and fraud against Americans, Europeans, members of the Commonwealth, and Japan. Oh, and don't forget Iraq. Don't forget Libya. Don't forget all of the countries that they have very quietly assaulted and taken over and completely messed with their natural political process. Don't forget about the government of Ukraine, which was murdered in cold blood by these mercenaries and replaced by Mr. Zelensky, a land developer from Florida. These kinds of putches have been orchestrated by the CIA for many decades, and we suffered one ourselves in 2020. There are elements of the CIA and the quote unquote intelligence agencies which are entirely corrupt. We have a network and a nest of them in Frankfurt, Germany, which is the home birthplace of the Fabian Society. The same philosophical and quasi-religious Fabian Society is also responsible for its adherents in Britain, which just happen to be the Wellcome Trust, the Pure Bright Institute, the Pilgrim Society, the Cecil Rhodes Endowment. So there is a thread. There is a connection here. And we can trace it all the way back. So we have renegade intelligence societies and networks that have been in the background finagling all these social contract issues that have nothing to do with life on this planet and everything to do with robbery and coercive control. Now, it may be of interest to you all, as there's been recent news about the international criminal courts and about investigations into the tragedy happening in Gaza. And people are cheering that, oh, yes, the International Criminal Court is taking action against some of the major players responsible. They have issued warrants for the arrest of people like Benjamin Netanyahu. It will interest you to know that the US has never signed the accords to come into compliance with international law. Isn't that convenient? The pirates decide that they're not going to be bound to international law, and so they simply don't support the court. Think about that. We are facing a huge struggle in this country, and mainly it's an intellectual and emotional struggle. The intellectual struggle is to understand what's gone on here and who's who and who has what rights. The emotional struggle derives from the fact that we have had so many terrible losses and struggles and painful, painful days when our young men and women have been overseas fighting in these horrible wars, and we have sat here as parents and grandparents and waited for their return. And if we have nothing else, we have looked at Old Glory, the flag, and we have thought that they gave their lives for something noble. We were told, and they were told, that they were fighting for freedom and democracy, that the intent of their sacrifice was to provide security and honorable care for the people of another country, or to punish a country that was trampling the rights of its own citizens, etc., etc., etc. And instead, we've been lied to, and our flag has been dishonored, and our sons and daughters have been sacrificed for nothing but corporate profits. I am very sorry to have to tell you this, but the British have been borrowing our Title IV flag and using it however they wanted. They have been doing despicable things in our names. And the members of Congress have gone along with this and done nothing. They have participated in it gleefully and without regard or respect for us or for our needs or for our interests as asset owners. Nothing. They've simply trampled all over us for decades while pretending to be us and pretending to be our representatives. They have sold us down the road 100% of the time. And this is because they are not actually acting as Americans. This is because they are Tories. Do you all recall what a Tory is? It's a shortened name for territorial. A Tory is a territorial. They were British sympathizers during the War of Independence, and they are still here. And they are still using our country and abusing our country for their motherland, which they consider to be the king and the British crown. And these sleeper cells of Tories just stayed on generation to generation until they saw their opportunity to usurp against our government and to seize control, which they did during the Civil War. And they've been sitting in the catbird seat, betraying every interest of this country and its people ever since. They've done the same to the Commonwealth countries. They've done the same to the 17 countries that were conquered in World War II and never released, and Japan also. They have been running this as a military empire, and they have been doing it under every conceivable front and fraud scheme known to man. And we've been sitting here like dumb driven cattle, allowing it because we didn't know better. We didn't know our own history. We didn't know who they were. We didn't understand how the popes and the British monarchs were divvying up their interest in our property so that the popes got 60% of the take and the British monarch got 40%. We didn't realize that baptismal certificates were being bought and sold on black markets that were devoted to the proverbial buying and selling of souls. And by that, it was meant the energy, your labor, was being bought and sold. Look up Miller bonds. These are child labor bonds designed to harvest the value of your labor as a child from birth until you reach the age of maturity.
And that's from the Miller Act, right?
Right. These people are evil, and they've been running our government based on delegated authority, or so they say, that was supposedly delegated by us and by our parents and our grandparents. They have been doing this based on the idea that we just went somewhere over the horizon, went to sea. We're absent, according to them, and our government is an interregnum, according to them,